Okay, let's talk about slope-intercept form today, you guys. Slope-intercept form always looks like y equals, and then there'll be a number in front of the x plus another number. Okay, that number in front of the x is always the slope, and the number that's being added is always the y-intercept. So remember, we can write the y-intercept as a point that we're going to graph by putting parentheses 0, comma, whatever that number is. Remember, x is 0 because it's the y-intercept, and y is the number. Okay, so take a look here, a number example. If they give us the equation y equals 4x plus 1, you just look at the number in front of the x, the 4, and that's the slope of the line. And then the number that's being added, that's the y-intercept of the line. So if the y-intercept was 1, the point we would graph is 0, comma 1. Okay, and then take a look at example 1. And you might hear my new little kitten purring right now because she's purring. And anyway, so take a look at example 1, letter A. It says y equals negative x plus 7. Well, put that negative and leave a space. And remember, with your red, put that giant invisible 1, x plus 7. So the equation y equals negative x plus 7 can be written as y equals negative 1x plus 7. And so it has a slope of negative 1. The number in front of the x is negative 1. And it has a y-intercept of 7. The number that's being added is 7. And we can write that y-intercept as a point we're going to graph, 0, comma 7. Okay, so take a look at B right now. They wanted us to write the equation negative 9x plus 3y equals negative 6 in slope-intercept form. Now remember, this form would be something that I would use the intercepts for. I'd make that giant T underneath it and figure out the x-intercept by covering up the y and figure out the y-intercept by covering up the x. But that's not what they want us to do. They want us to just solve for y. Now, I'm not going to expect you guys in Math 7 to do that, so don't worry about it. I'm just going to walk you through this real quickly. I'm going to give you the equations where I've already solved for y, but this is just real quick to show you. If I had negative 9x plus 3y equals negative 6, I would try to get this negative 9x to go to the other side of the equation, so I'd have to do that by adding 9x on both sides. So that would give me 3y equals 9x plus negative 6. And then I don't want to know what 3y is, I just want to know what y is, so I want to get rid of the 3. So I'd have to divide by 3 on both sides of the wall. But here's the thing. In algebra, when there's an addition sign, I have to divide every single term by 3. So 3 divided by 3 just cancels out and makes that giant 1, so I get 1y. I bring down the equal sign. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3x. I bring down the plus, and then negative 6 divided by 3 is just negative 2. So my equation is y equals 3x plus negative 2. Now this I would give you. And so if I ask you what is the slope, you just look at that number in front of the x and you say, well, 3 is the slope, okay? So it has a slope of 3. And then if I ask you what's the y-intercept, you just look at the number being added, and that would be the negative 2. So the negative 2 is my y-intercept. Now I took this one step further. Remember, you can write the slope as rise over run. So if they give me 3, I would write the slope as 3 over 1. And I can write the y-intercept as a point. It would be 0, comma, negative 2. Okay, take a look at example 2 with me, graphing using the slope-intercept form. Wow, and my kitty is not going to let me do this today. Okay, so if they give us the equation y equals 1/4 x plus 5, the first thing we're going to do, it's a three-step process. The first thing we're going to do is find the y-intercept. So remember, the y-intercept, ouch, is always that number that's being added. Okay, let's see if I can pick it up from there. The kitty went running into the other room. She was attacking me. And anyway, so take a look at number 1. The y-intercept is 5 because that's the number being added. So I'm going to write it as a point, 0, comma 5. And so I would go to the graph and I would put a dot we'll start at the origin. 0 means you don't go right or left. 5 means you get in the elevator and go up to the number 5 on the y-axis and you put your point. Now, the second thing we do is we find the slope, and the slope is that number in front of the x, and sometimes it looks like a fraction. That's fine, because remember, it's rise over run. So the slope is 1 over 4, so remember, it's 1 that we're going to rise and 4 that we're going to run. And so you start at the y-intercept, and you rise 1, and you run 4, and you put another dot. And then I'm going to do it again. From that new dot, you rise 1 and run 4 and put a second dot. Okay? And so once you have a few points, and some people say, well, how many do I have to draw? I usually draw as many as I can fit on the coordinate plane. And then you just draw a line through the points. So then I just drew my line through these points, and I put arrows on both ends. And so it's a really fast way to graph. Okay, so take a look at number 1. It's y equals 4x plus 3. So the first step is find the y-intercept. It's always the number being added. So I know the y-intercept is 3, so I'm going to write it as a point that I can graph, 0, 3. So I go to the origin, I start at 0, 0, and then I just rise 3, and I put my dot, my y-intercept dot, and I made it red so it would stand out. Okay, then the second thing I do is I find the slope. Well, the slope is always that number touching the x, in front of the x. So I see the slope is 4, and I'm going to write it like a fraction, 4 over 1. So that means I rise 4 and I run 1. So starting at the y-intercept, at this red dot, rise 4. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, and then run 1 and put a dot. Now, if I rose 4 again, do you see how I would go off the graph? So another way to do this is starting at the y-intercept, I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to run backwards 1. So remember, a negative 4 over a negative 1 still makes that positive 4 slope. Okay, so you can do that, and then you just draw your line, put the arrows, and you're good to go. Take a look at number 2. I want you to lightly cross out the equation they gave you because I solved it for y. So write y equals x minus 8. Now with your red, put that giant invisible 1 in front of the x, and then with your red, add a line and change the sign in front of the 8. So this says y equals 1x plus negative 8. Well, part A, the first step is you find the y-intercept, the number that's being added, and I see negative 8. So I wrote it as a point, 0, negative 8. So I went on my graph to the origin, and 0 means I don't move right or left. Negative 8 means I get in the elevator and go down to negative 8, and I put my dot, and I made it red so you can see that's the y-intercept right there. And now B is we find the slope of the line. Well, the slope of the line is that number in front of the x, the 1. So I know that m equals 1, so I wrote it like a fraction, 1 over 1. So that means I rise 1 and I run 1 to create my line. So start at the y-intercept, rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1. And notice each time I put a dot, rise 1, run 1, 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 run 1, put a dot. So now I have all these dots, so I drew my line connecting the dots, and I put arrows on both ends. So that is the equation. That's the picture of this line. Take a look at number 3. I have y equals negative 2/3 x, and then nothing else. So with my red, I put a plus 0 because there isn't anything there, so I'm going to help myself see it. So this means it's negative 2/3 x plus 0. So the first thing I do is I find the y-intercept, the number that's being added. In this case, it's 0, so I'm going to write 0, 0. So I went to my graph and I put my dot at 0, 0. And then the second thing I do is I find the slope. The slope is a number in front of the x, a negative 2/3. So I wrote negative 2 over 3. So notice how the negative was on top. I'm also going to write it as positive 2 over negative 3. I'm going to let the negative drop down to the 3, and I'll show you why. So the first thing I do is I rise negative 2. Well, remember, rising negative 2 means you actually drop 2, and then I'm going to run forward 3. So from my y-intercept, I went down 1, 2, and I ran forward 1, 2, 3, and I put a dot. Okay, now look at this other one. Positive 2 over negative 3. So from my y-intercept, I rose 2, 1, 2, but I ran backwards 3. 1, 2, 3, and I put a dot. So now I have 3 dots, and I connected the lines, and there is my line. Okay, take a look at number 4. Again, they didn't solve for y, so I solved for y for you. It's y equals 5 over 2x plus 3. So the first thing you do is find the y-intercept, the number that's being added. I see 3 is being added, so I wrote it as a point, 0, 3. So I started at the origin. 0 means don't move right or left. Positive 3 means go up 3. And so I went up 3 and I put a dot and I made it red. That's our y-intercept. And then find the slope. It's the number in front of the x, 5 over 2. So that means I'm going to rise 5, run 2. So I rose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I ran forward 1, 2, and I put a dot. Now, I also did another dot, and watch how I did it. From the origin, I went down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's negative 5. And then I ran backwards 2. 1, 2. That's negative 2. Well, negative 5 over negative 2 still makes a positive slope. And then I drew my line. Okay, take a look at example 3 with me. It says, what is an equation of the line shown in the graph at the right? So here they gave us this line, and they gave us 2 points on the line, negative 1, 4, and 0, 2. So the first thing they want us to do is find the slope. So remember, I just used the coordinates they gave me, negative 1, 4, and 0, 2, and I let the y's rise. So it was 4 minus 2 over, and the x's dropped down, negative 1 minus 0. Well, then with my red, I added a line and changed the sign. So I had 4 plus negative 2, made positive 2 on top, and negative 1 plus 0 is just negative 1 on the bottom. Well, 2 divided by negative 1 just makes negative 2. So that is my slope. And so that's what I'm going to put in here for M. Now, the second thing I did is I just found the y-intercept. And that's the line. It's the line that crosses the x-axis at 0, 2. So take a look right here. I find the y-axis, and I see it touches the y-axis at 0, 2. So 2 is my y-intercept. So I put that in for B. So I just wrote y equals negative 2, that was the slope, x plus 2 is the y-intercept. And so I know that equation is the equation of the line, which matches choice A. Okay, and go ahead and lightly cross out example 4. We're done with this lesson.